1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3. Checking 1, 2, 3. A, B, C. Yep.
If you are appreciative that we are having this event, our county party would appreciate you if you would make us a monetary donation. We have envelopes over there at the door at our table. We also have a jar over there. We do have to pay for this facility. So we would appreciate if you appreciate us giving you this opportunity to meet these candidates, then we would appreciate a little support from you. And also, the reason for having this candidate forum is to make you informed voters for the upcoming caucus on Tuesday, March 6th. So if you did not get your invitation to a caucus, we will be back in this building, not this room. We will be over in the cafeteria on Tuesday, March 6th. It begins at 7 o'clock. The doors open at 5:30 for registration. Please do not come at 5 minutes to 7, okay? Because you have to sign in, you have to figure out your precinct. So come a little bit early. That's why the registration begins at 5:30. The caucus will begin at 7. So, the first thing we're going to do today is that we are going to introduce to you, before we get to the gubernatorial candidates, we're going to introduce to you, because we have 2 candidates for Congressional District 3, and we want to give you an opportunity to meet them, and so we are going to, my timer is not here. Oh, realize that. Okay, I'll figure that out. I know where the cards are, right there. All right, so they are each going to get 5 minutes to introduce themselves to you, and then we'll get to the gubernatorial candidates. So we're going to ask Diane Mitchbush to come first, and she's going to introduce herself to you.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you all for being here. I'm Diane Mitchbush. I'm running for Congress to help build a more just, equitable, sustainable, and prosperous future for all of us and for all our children. Scott Tipton is a puppet. He doesn't listen to us. He listens to big money. He listens to Republican House leadership, and of course, he listens to Trump. We deserve better. We deserve real representation, and that's why I'm running. Since I started running in last July, in Pueblo, I've talked to hundreds of people throughout our 3rd CD. 3 issues have always come up when I've talked to people. The first one, we must expand economic opportunity and reduce economic inequality. In 2017, Scott Tipton and Donald Trump have done the opposite every chance they've gotten. Scott Tipton voted for the so-called tax cut bill. That bill gave some benefits to working people, temporary benefits. But the overwhelming majority of benefits went to the top 1% and to multinational corporations. Think what we could have done with that money. We could have invested in our communities, invested in infrastructure, helped small businesses create living wage jobs. Investing in infrastructure gives back to our communities. It creates jobs, and it creates big multiplier effects. Investing in transportation, in water, in broadband, all of these enhance our communities and our competitiveness. We used to invest in our people. We used to invest in our infrastructure. We've neglected both for many years, and now we're less globally competitive. The second issue that everyone brings up is the need to fully fund and support public education. Public education is the foundation for opportunity, and it's the foundation of a strong democracy. The third issue that everyone has brought up is that we must ensure the health of our people and our environment. Lack of access to quality, affordable health care is an emergency in the 3rd CD. I will work for universal health care and at the same time defend Medicaid, Medicare, CHIP, and our rural health clinics. This administration is attacking, really waging war on our environment. We need to bring back strong protections and enhance them. Protections for our air, our water, our free-flowing rivers, our wildlife habitat, and we have to keep public lands public. So why am I the best candidate to do this? Because I've done it. I served in the Colorado House and I was a county commissioner. I've legislated across the aisle. I've helped work with others to produce evidence-based, science-based policy that really helps real people's lives. I've done it, I've been there. But most importantly, I can beat Scott Tipton. I've won 5 elections with considerable margins, first as a county commissioner, then as a state representative, in areas where Democrats were not the majority. I've worked across the aisle for common sense, practical legislation. I've built a strong, broad-based coalition across our entire district in my many years of being a public servant. I've worked with farmers and ranchers and business people and truckers. I've won awards from very different kinds of farm organizations. In 2015, I was named Legislator of the Year by the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union and by the Colorado Livestock Association. Right and left, I get support. In 2017, I was named Legislator of the Year by Conservation Colorado and by the truckers. I will beat Scott Tipton because I've already built the infrastructure. I'm running to bring back real representation and real solutions. I will be your strong voice for Southern Colorado and our Western Slope in the United States House. And I would be so honored to have your support in your fight. Thank you.
Diane and I are getting good at handing off the mic. We did a series of events down in the San Luis Valley that were well attended, just like this one is. So thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate that enormously. The first question I always get, other than my name, I'm Carl Hamlin, I'm running for Congress. You may have figured that one out. The first question I always get is, why would a guy who's not a professional politician, who has an amazing law practice, who has a nonprofit that works with kids with autism and veterans with PTSD, why would this guy throw himself into the fray and take on such a daunting challenge in such a challenging time? And the answer to that really is my family. I have an amazing family. They run a nonprofit, they go out every day, they do good work, they try to change the world, but most importantly, they step up. And over the last year, it's become clear that it's my time to step up. If we're going to see a change, if we're going to get away from career politicians, get away from people who don't listen to you, if we're going to get away from all of those things, we need to focus and we need to step up. Just like you're stepping up today, you're here, you're activated, it's early, but you're stepping up and you're being part of this process. That's what it's about. So why me? That's the next question. I grew up on a ranch in the northeast portion of this district, up by Walden, Colorado. I put myself through college at the University of Wyoming. I came back, I was a park ranger for 4 years. After that, I went out to law school at Lewis and Clark in Portland, Oregon, where I rolled into campus in my 3/4-ton pickup with the gun racks. And I figured out what it was like to talk to people who didn't necessarily have the same point of view you did. And it really started a career of working with people and working in a nonpartisan, not only a bipartisan way to make things happen. So I came back to Colorado to practice water law, where I've done that for 21 years in Glenwood Springs. Along the way, I started representing municipalities. And in the course of that representation, I've worked on a variety of issues, one of which is broadband. In Glenwood Springs, almost 20 years ago, we brought broadband to the community. It's the reason you guys have to have a vote to bring broadband to your communities now, is because of what we did in Glenwood Springs 20 years ago. So it's an issue I know well, and I've worked on a long time. On the water side, I've negotiated with the Front Range, I've worked on the state water plan, I did the last draft of the Basin Implementation Plan. But that's all well and good, so what am I going to do? What am I here about? So 3 things that we're going to focus on in this campaign. We're going to talk about preserving our communities, and when we talk about preserving our communities, that means talking in a meaningful way about healthcare with real solutions. It means talking about the opioid crisis in a meaningful way and talking about real solutions. And it means addressing veteran services. We live in rural communities where veterans, we deliver more people to the military than any place else out of rural America, and we have the worst services for our veterans in rural America. And it's an issue that is deeply personal to me. I have a son going into the Air Force this spring. He's commissioning in as an Air Liaison Officer Select, which means he is a Special Forces guy. He will be embedded with Ranger teams and SEAL teams. What we do with our military is deeply personal to me and how we treat our veterans. The second is protecting our public lands. It's easy to see what's going on right now. It's hard to make that change. It's hard to stand up. Absolutely, we have to protect our public lands, and that ties to the third issue, which is growing economic opportunities. And how are we going to do that? It's going to vary depending on where we're at in the district. Out here, we're focusing on a public lands economy. We're talking about outdoor rec and all the industries that go along with that. Yesterday I toured the Mayfly facility here in Montrose. Amazing facility and a great example of how we can grow and stabilize our economy. Down in Pueblo, we're really talking more about renewable energy. So it's going to vary by community, but we can absolutely get there if we work hard at it. So where does that leave us today? We know we have to beat Scott Tipton, and here's the deal. It's easy to win in the counties we always win. We always win in Routt, we always win in Eagle, we always win in Pitkin, we always win in La Plata, we do well in Alamosa. It is how we win in the rest of the district and how we connect that matters. That's what's going to win this election. It's the ability to stand in front or sit down with a beer with the shop steward in Pueblo and understand how hot it is in front of an arc furnace and have that conversation. You've got to earn the unaffiliated votes. So my promise to you today is this, it's the same one I made to my family. I'm not going to give up my values or my principles to do this run. I am always going to be there to listen. And most importantly, I will always, always stand up for you because I'm your representative. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I do want to explain, I forgot to explain one thing to all of you. The reason that we do have one more camera set up right down here is that we are live streaming out to the periphery of our county, to Delta County, to Gunnison County, La Plata County, down to Montezuma County. So we would like to, I forgot to welcome all the people out there on live stream. And so actually we have some volunteers from Montrose High School technology class. They're here helping us out, so would you please stand up? All right, so we are now ready to move into our gubernatorial section of our forum. And actually, our moderator today is Dan Hudson-Pillar. He is, as you probably know, he's our only elected Democrat in Montrose County. He is our district attorney. And so I'm going to turn this over to him and let him handle it from here.
Thank you very, very much, Connie. I never know what that means that I'm the only Democrat elected in quite a few counties over here. But welcome, everyone. This is a great event. Great to see everybody here. We are going to start with 3-minute openings from each of the gubernatorial candidates.
Well, good morning. I'm Donna Lynn. I am the Lieutenant Governor and Chief Operating Officer for the state of Colorado. That is a blessing. It's also a challenge. I have to be back in Denver at 4 o'clock, which means I will be here for most of the questions, but not all of them. So my day job, which is evenings, weekends, as well, is a great opportunity, but also creates some timing issues for me. So thanks for being here. I have been in this role with Governor Hickenlooper and have been pleased to serve you. I spent a lot of time here. One of my duties is to be responsible for the Colorado Commission on Indian Affairs, so I am in Montezuma County a lot. I'm in Ignacio, I'm in Toyac. I was here in Montrose for the opening of the youth museum, and have done quite a bit of work in this part of the state. But let me tell you a little bit about the role that I have and why I made the decision to run for governor. I have a career in 20 years in the public sector, always in appointed positions, not in elected positions. And I've done a number of things from working in healthcare, working for working wages and benefits for employees, and also spent 20 years in the nonprofit healthcare sector. When Governor Hickenlooper asked me to be his lieutenant governor, I didn't hesitate because the state has given back a lot to me personally and professionally, and I wanted another opportunity to serve all of you. And that's why I decided to run for governor. The experience I had as governor, lieutenant governor, being in all 64 counties, going to our prisons, working with our community colleges, and working on other substantive issues, combined with what happened in November 2016, which was something we're still trying to recover from as Democrats, said to me that Colorado needs a strong, experienced leader who can get things done and can fight back against what's going on in Washington. And that's exactly what I've been doing for the last year on healthcare, an issue that's critical to this area. We've been fighting the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, and actually, I often say the governor right now is in Washington, which makes me the governor here in Colorado. He is working on a bipartisan solution on health care. The other two issues that I really care a lot about are housing and our infrastructure. Housing, I have heard, just finished an 8-city housing tour last weekend and got out to Grand Junction and Glenwood Springs and Carbondale. A critical issue for people, the cost of land, the cost of housing. And our infrastructure, whether it's broadband, water, or transportation, we've got to tackle. Why do I care about these? I myself am a working mom. I had been a single mom myself for 26 years and struggled many of the struggles that I know many people here in Colorado struggle. We can't afford housing, we can't afford health care if our wage growth is stagnant, and I will work to continue to improve those working conditions for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a directional microphone, so you really do have to talk right into it, and our timekeeper is over here.
Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Mike Johnston. I'm a state senator from Denver. Delighted to be back on the Western Slope. I grew up on the Western Slope, so I have to tell you I had a little bit of PTSD coming into town this morning because my dream of a high school soccer title died on the Montrose High School field about 10 minutes from here. So if there are any 45-year-old Montrose High alums who are up for a rematch today, I'm ready. But thank you all so much for being here. As I mentioned, I grew up on the Western Slope. I spent most of my career as a high school teacher and as a high school principal, so I'm very used to running gymnasiums like this one. But I also spent a couple of years as Senator Obama, then President Obama's top education advisor when he ran for president, and then spent 7 years in the state Senate myself. But I always think about when I come back to the Western Slope what it was like for me to grow up in a small town on the Western Slope. And I remember when I was a kid walking down Main Street with my dad, and there would be a pop can in the road, and he would stop and pick it up. And I would say, Dad, that's not your trash. And he would say, when it's your home, it's always your trash. And I remember when folks had to get the first library built or the first hospital built, there wasn't a question of which party you came from. It was the question of, did you want to make a point or did you want to make a difference? And I find still my best friends and neighbors, I couldn't tell you which party they came from. But what there was a sense that this was your home, that you belonged here. You believed you could still solve problems with folks that worked next door to you, and that you could build things that would last. That's what I love about Colorado, and that's what I want to try to keep about Colorado, which is small towns where folks don't feel like they got to move to the big city to get a job because the job they have here won't pay the rent, or where they feel like they got to leave because the schools don't have the resources they need to give their kids the opportunity that they dream for them, or because there's not enough water left to water the fields. Those are all major challenges that we're going to see right now. And I'm very proud of the fact that in my 7 years in the state Senate, I passed more than 120 pieces of legislation signed by the governor, more than 100 of those co-sponsored by Republicans. Because my belief, like what I found growing up out here, is if you want to get things done, you got to be willing to work with everybody in Colorado. And that includes things like Jumpstart, which was our rural economic development proposal, which has already opened more than 7 businesses in Grand Junction, created more than 200 jobs in just the first year and a half. So I think that tradition is still in place. There's a lot still to do right now. Excited to talk about this as we get into it, but there are a lot of things we have to do as governor. One of the things I want to do is repeal the worst parts of Tabor so we can finally fund our schools and our roads and our bridges in this state. Yeah, you can, that's okay, you can be excited about that. We want to make sure that we help move the state towards a 100% renewable energy economy. We want to make sure that we can actually help people get the skills they need for the jobs that are coming, and to make sure we can keep housing and healthcare affordable by allowing folks a public option to buy into Medicaid so they can get affordable healthcare wherever they live. We know this is one of the most expensive healthcare regions in the country right now. Excited to talk to you more about that. Most of all, what I want to do is help make sure we're building a state where we still have towns where 8-year-olds are picking up trash that doesn't belong to them. Because I think that's what Colorado's about on today's.
Good morning, Montrose County Democrats. I'm Carrie Kennedy. It's a great privilege to be here as a candidate for governor. I want to thank you all for coming out this morning, and also want to thank Connie for all of your great work for the Democratic Party here in this county. It's been a real privilege for me to be a part of Colorado's leadership team, including serving as your state treasurer, a position that I was elected to statewide in 2006. We are proud of Colorado. We are an innovative and forward-looking state. We've built one of the top economies in the nation. I am proud to have been a part of the team that has helped lay the foundation for that progress. And I'm running for governor to continue doing the great work that we're doing here, but also to make sure that our progress reaches everyone, and that we keep Colorado the place that we all love. I've been responsible for managing your state tax money. I helped balance the budget throughout the economic crisis, and as treasurer, I moved your tax dollars, $2 billion of it, out of a Wall Street bank ahead of the downturn. And we avoided the losses here in Colorado that other states incurred with their public funds. The financial management experience is an important credential for governor, but I am running for this office because I believe there are 3 things we need to do in this state. First, we need to make public education our state's #1 priority. It doesn't make any sense we got the top-ranked economy and our investment in our schools and in our public colleges and universities ranks at the bottom among states. I grew up with 3 brothers and sisters who joined my family through the foster care program. So I've seen what it means when kids don't get the opportunities they need to succeed, and you'll see me make public education #1. We also need to keep healthcare accessible and affordable for everyone in our state. I believe in universal healthcare, and I have called for Colorado to offer a public health insurance option, the opportunity to buy into our public health insurance plans so that everyone in our state has an affordable healthcare option. And you all certainly don't need to be talked about this, because you face some of the highest healthcare costs, not just in the state, but in the country. And it would give the people of this county an opportunity for more affordable healthcare and health insurance. Finally, we need to keep Colorado the place that we love. Turns out people all over the country love Colorado as much as we do, and a lot of them are moving here. We're forecasting another 4 to 5 million people to move into our state. We can't stop that growth, but we need to do a much better job managing and preparing for it, protecting our open space and our public lands. We will never sell our public lands for private development. Protecting our air quality, our water quality, and leading on the most pressing issue of our lifetimes, which is climate change. Thank you all so much. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Good morning. Oh, come on. Good morning. Good morning. That's right. You want to keep that seat blue, don't you? My name is Eric Underwood, and I'm running for governor of Colorado. Let me tell you a little bit about my background, because that will inform you how I came to get to my positions and my platform. I come from a single-parent household. My mom had 6 children, 2 sets of twins, and I'm a twin myself. I have a twin sister named Erica. We grew up poor, very poor, 3 housing projects. My mom was on Medicaid, food stamps, and the whole 9 yards. So I know what it's like to struggle. I've seen it. I've seen where my mom had to figure out whether she needed to pay for food or to keep the electric on. That's kept me humble in my life. How I came to be where I am today was through pure determination, a little luck, and a lot of help along the way. I'm here because my mom instilled that education is the key to success. And the books were my friend. So I went off to college. I worked for a United States Senator, George Voinovich from Ohio. He was a 2-term governor and a 2-term United States Senator. That's where I got my start in Washington, D.C., in politics and learning how the sausage is made in our political system. Literally. I went off to start my own business. I'm a digital technology guy. I did a $100 million deal with AT&T, which brought my company here to Colorado. And I picked Colorado because number one, it was a beautiful state, and the people that I was meeting for the first time getting off the plane were inviting me to dinner and saying, you gotta come here, you gotta stay. So I stayed. I never looked back since. This is a beautiful state, and we gotta keep it beautiful for the next generation. Let me tell you something. We have a great economy in the state, but so many people are getting left behind. My campaign theme is outward inward, from rural Colorado to urban Colorado and everyone in between. I know what it's like to fight to have access to opportunities. I know what it's like, so I'm gonna work hard for you. I don't want to repeal parts of Tabor, I want to repeal it all. We need to repeal Tabor once and for all right now so we can fund our schools, fix our roads. We have to do that. The other thing is I'm the only candidate here that has a free college education program to graduating high school seniors with a B average called the Colorado Hope Grant. Where do we pay? How do we pay for it? Through the state lottery revenues. I am a candidate that has a clear plan and vision for this state. The old stuff isn't working, and we need time for new leadership and new energy. So I look forward to this discussion, and thank you for having me.
My name is Noel Ginsberg, and I too am running for governor. It seems like we should have taken a bus and all come up together, guys. Thank you for being here this morning. A little bit about my history. I was born in Denver, and I grew up working in a pickle plant of all places because that's what my dad did. I drove a forklift before I could drive a car. And when I was at the University of Denver, with that background and experience, I fell in love with manufacturing. So in my junior year, I wrote a business plan to start a company. And I actually started that company at the end of my junior year and left DU at the beginning of my senior year to run the company I have today, Intertech Plastics and Intertech Medical. I make things. So whether you go into a bathroom and you see a koala baby changing station, that was made right here in Colorado, and well over 300 other products. But I went into business to do more than just make a living. And I did it to also help make a difference, and to use that company as a platform to do just that. And over the last 38 years, that is what I've been a part of. And I want to share with you those things that have had the greatest influence, and I would say are the reasons that I am running for governor now. And the first was being one of the founders of the Colorado I Have a Dream Foundation, an organization that adopts inner city kids in the 3rd grade, provides wraparound services for them for 10 years to make sure that high dropout rates turn into high graduation rates. And that organization now has the highest concentration of Dreamer classes anywhere in the country. But 20 years ago, my wife and I adopted our own class through sponsorship of 42 kids from the South Lincoln Housing Projects in Denver, a neighborhood with a 90% dropout rate. And we spent a decade making sure that that was not their future. And whether it was going to parent-teacher conferences, getting our kids braces, whatever you would do if they were your kid. And ultimately, 10 years later, we graduated 92% of our kids. And that taught me that one person really can make a difference. And whether it was working for 2 governors, Governor Roy Romer, or later, Governor John Hickenlooper, to found now the CareerWise Colorado, a statewide youth apprenticeship system, my history has been making a difference in our community, not just in business, because we'd all agree having a business background doesn't qualify you to be, what, president? We have real issues in Colorado. Issues related to education, everybody here has said that. We have 50% of our school districts in this state that operate 4 days a week, the majority for financial reasons. That is not a Colorado value. If you're going to say education is your passion, then you have to do something about it, and I will. Second, we know healthcare, both in rural Colorado and our urban centers, is consuming our economy, 18% of our GDP in this country. If we don't create a way not to just ensure that everyone has insurance, but that we ensure there is competition within healthcare in this state so that we can have it for everyone, and we know that whatever our issues are, they will be taken care of. We need a governor that will put up solid answers to real issues, not promises that can't be met. As your next governor, that's exactly what I will do. Thank you.
Fantastic. Great stuff. That was worth the price of admission right there. We got more for you. The way this is going to work is we have questions that have been submitted from the audience, written out in cards. My job is to put them into topics. Each of the candidates will be given 2 minutes to give an answer to the question. So with respect to each question, each candidate will be given an opportunity to answer. It's limited to 2 minutes. There will be no follow-up. If you do the math, that's only 7 or 8 questions we're going to be able to get to today, so we're going to get right into it, and it also means that not every one of the questions that have been submitted are going to be asked. That's just the way it works. A lot of the questions reflect concern about our public lands. I think people feel that our public lands are under threat. What would you, and we're going to start with the first question, we'll start here, the second question will start here, and move on down the road. What will you do to protect our public lands? The mic should swing for you a little bit. And raise your hands up there if you can't hear responses to the questions, and we'll adjust the microphone.
Thank you. I was going to say I'm short, but not that short. So our public lands are, in fact, what we value, what many people value, and as we've said, people come here to visit, to actually just enjoy. I think the most important thing on public lands, and I mentioned this, you need, with what's going on in Washington, a governor who's going to be able to fight back, who can get to the key issues we have on public lands. I've been involved in the Bears Ears fight with the tribes, and we have to stand strong, not just on our own public lands, but on public lands around our state, because it's the tip of the iceberg in coming after our public lands. And so far that hasn't happened. I really believe that the work that we do currently in Colorado has created for our own state-owned lands, because remember, about almost 50% of our lands here in Colorado are public. Some of them are federal, some of them are state. We are fighting to continue to make the state lands protected, make them accessible to everybody who wants to use them. But when it comes to the federal lands, we've got to have, number one, a strong Democratic governor. We've got to have a majority in our state Senate, in the Democratic Party, to continue that work as well. And we also have to have the ability to work collaboratively with Washington. We've been doing some of that work. Protecting the gold mine area and many of the other mines that we have here is also important to not just protecting the public lands, but what else has happened around our state that impacts our water, our air quality. And by doing those things in the state, working with industry where we have to deal with our extraction in this state, we've got to continue to move towards renewable energy, cleaner air, and we do that on a state basis. I do that work every day supervising the Department of Public Health and the Environment. It's not just about protecting the lands, it's about protecting everything in this state that impacts our own health and our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there are some things that Americans claim to invent that maybe we didn't. Pizza, not so sure. Hamburger, maybe not. One of the truly great American ideas that is absolutely ours is national parks and public lands. And the fundamental idea was not that those lands belong to Utah or to the governor of Utah or to a senator from New Mexico. It is that they belong to all of us, which means no one has the power to take them away, to give them away, or to watch them get destroyed. And so the great news is, of all the things that Donald Trump is trying to mess up, this is actually one that the governor has a significant power to stop. And so if in fact you do have the U.S. Congress or the president try to release public lands, those then come into the custody of the next governor, which means one of us gets to decide, hopefully, what happens with those public lands. My commitment is simple. I will not sell and I will not lease any public lands to anybody else. And I think we have to be that clear about our commitment. Because the reality is, I mentioned I grew up in Eagle County. My family has a bed and breakfast. We started it 43 years ago. My brother and I and my mom still run it today, which means our entire business relies on people that come and use public lands. And that's not just true in Eagle, that's true in Pitkin, that's true in Garfield, that's true in Grand Junction, where we're going this afternoon. It is not just a nice thing for people to go and do. It is at the heart of the economy of much of the Western Slope right now, which means threats on public lands are not just threats on what we love about Colorado, they're actually threats on our ability to put food on the table. And so this is a place where I think there are broad coalitions to build to say we are going to fight to protect these public lands. And I think the next governor has got to be willing to not only do it in Colorado, but to do it against the president. This is an unusual time. We have to be willing to fight your own president. I think that's what this is going to require, and I will be more than willing to do it. Thank you.
So 70% of the land here in Montrose County is public lands. No surprise that this was the first question that you all asked, and a lot of people had questions about it. Your county's home to my favorite peak in the state, Uncompahgre. Climbed it with my kids a couple of years ago. As I said in my opening remarks, we have to protect our public lands. We cannot sell off our public lands for private development. It isn't, as Mike said, just because we enjoy those lands, but they are the economic future of this state. And as regions like this one move to diversify their economies so that it's not solely reliant on extraction industries, you're drawing more and more tourism here into this county and throughout this region because people come to enjoy our public lands. They're coming to hunt and fish and camp and ski, and we need to make sure that we protect those public lands. Leadership in the years ahead is going to come from governors. As we see the threats on our public lands coming from President Trump and the Republicans in Congress, it is going to be strong Democratic governors and governors here in the Western United States who work together to defend and protect our public lands because we know that's the future of our state and our state's economy. Thank you.
I have to go back to a little bit of my childhood to answer this question because it's very important for you guys to get to know me and how I'm going to make decisions for you guys in the future. Growing up in a housing project, we didn't have a lot of open space or public lands, trees, parks, that kind of thing. Every time when I was a kid going to a park or a national park, that was like total freedom. It was like going to heaven. It was like I didn't have to worry about the struggles that I dealt with earlier in the day growing up in a single-parent household. I will never sell out our public lands to anybody. And let me just go a step further. Not a fan of fracking either. I'm not. So that's right, I'm not a fan. So you can be rest assured that I'm not going to make any deals to sell our lands to even fracking companies or anything. I want to keep Colorado what I fell in love with in the first place when I stepped off that plane. I want to keep Colorado looking beautiful for generations to come. We owe it to ourselves and to our children and their children. So I think you guys know where I stand on this issue.
Every time I drive into Grand Junction and then into Montrose and you look at the mountains and just the incredible beauty of this state, we all agree that we have to protect our federal lands and our national monuments. When I walked in, I was talking to somebody who came from Texas and moved here and said that in Texas, only 2% of their land is public land. And a Republican there said, and that's too much. I think we know that's not too much, and that we all agree that we have to protect our lands because it drives our economy. You know, I used to teach skiing, and I know that there are many people that, whether it's rafting or fishing or just being out in our incredible state, that we have to protect it. And as governor, it's not just protecting Colorado, but it's also having a national voice. Because if they go after Utah as they did, we should stand up in Colorado and say no. Because wherever they encroach on public lands, it's taking from all of us. But in addition to that, I think as governor, it's my responsibility to look to the future. There will be millions of people moving to Colorado, and if they move here, if we don't have a vision in this state about what that growth looks like, what does transportation look like to get people to our open lands? Because right now on I-70, it's a parking lot. That is not what we should be doing as a state, and if we don't look into the future and decide what will the density of our communities look like, how will we get people from point A to point B? And as governor, I think it's my responsibility to help build that plan with your help, with your communities around the state regionally, that we then weave together into a vision of the next 50 years of this state that not only protects our public lands, but ensures that we continue to have open space and that Colorado doesn't become a sprawling state like sometimes you might think of California. This is a wonderful state, and we together must protect it. Thank you.
Diane had the right idea with the one mic. Let's work at that. Mike, you're up with this one next. The next topic is infrastructure. Several questions submitted about our infrastructure. What plan do you have to improve our statewide infrastructure for transportation? And I'm going to include broadband as well in that, and how do we pay for it?
Thank you so much. This is one of the most important questions, and Noel mentioned, of course, infrastructure is a problem with folks that are driving on I-70 or I-25. It's also a problem if you're driving over $1 million highway and you have 4 or 5 people who have been killed on that road in the last year and a half because there aren't guardrails and rumble strips and the simple things that make that road safer. And so it's not just a question of reducing traffic in some of the metro areas, it's a matter of increasing safety in all parts of the state. And if you look right now at where the state is, what we have is nearly a $20 billion deficit in roads and bridges infrastructure that we have neglected. So over the next 20 years, that's the tab that's come due if you want to make an impact. I was the chair of the Senate Finance Committee for 5 years, so I oversaw the budget. I can tell you that capacity does not exist in the current state budget as it stands, which means if you want to make long-term investment in infrastructure, which I think includes human infrastructure, like the kids that come to this building every day, this is why you have to go to the ballot and you have to make changes to Tabor to be able to make those investments long-term. And that's what I propose doing and have committed to doing in the first term as governor. And I think what that allows you to do is a couple of things. One is, yes, invest in the roads and bridges we need to be able to allow people to get to and from the places they love and the people they love. It also means making some investments in the next generation of infrastructure. I don't think we can, particularly in the metro area, believe that we're just going to pave our way out of this problem. You're just going to add one more lane on I-25 every 5 years until you get to 50 lanes. I don't think that's the strategy. I think we have to look at more innovative solutions like commuter rail to move up and down I-25 corridor, and look at how we can use technology as a way to make traffic flow move more efficiently. Right now we're working on an idea around the development of technology applications on your smartphone that you could use to provide coordinated travel along interstates. So you all coordinate to set your cruise control at the same number in one lane, and that makes traffic go 150% more efficiently. That's the same as paving a whole new lane on I-70 without spending $1 billion to do it. And so I think we have to look at what are the ways we can be more creative with the dollars we have, use the innovation that's out there, but fundamentally we're going to have to go to the voters and ask them to make changes to Tabor so we can make this investment if we want to be able to keep growing our businesses in the state. Thank you.
We have failed to maintain our infrastructure and invest in our infrastructure to keep up with the demands of a growing state. So in the metro area, it's resulted in traffic out here. We've got 40% of the lane miles in Colorado today rated in poor condition. That's a safety hazard. It's a challenge for commerce, for business, to be able to deliver goods around this state, and for all of us to have the mobility that we need. We haven't made the investments in transit. So our elderly population, they need opportunities for ride shares and van pools. We haven't been able to make those investments. And one of the reasons for this, as people have pointed out here today, is our Tabor Amendment, which was brought here 30 years ago by an out-of-state, anti-tax Tea Party agenda, and has prevented the state of Colorado from being able to keep up with the demands of growth and a growing economy in our state. Now, I've been working on the state's finances for over 2 decades, and I'm the only candidate up here that has taken on the Tabor Amendment at the statewide ballot twice. The only 2 measures that have passed statewide that have waived Tabor's limits, reversed its impact, avoided even deeper cuts that we would have had to make in our infrastructure investments, in our investments in education. Both those measures that passed statewide in Colorado, I helped develop and put on the ballot and built the bipartisan coalitions to get them passed. And as your governor, I will lead the bipartisan coalition, as I have in the past, to pass permanent Tabor reform. We have the bipartisan support today. We have Republican support in the legislature. We have local leaders all over this state. Nearly every local government in the state has already waived the caps that are in the Tabor Amendment. I will lead that effort as governor, and we'll get it done.
Here's how I look at infrastructure. Yeah, it's our schools, roads, and bridges. But what about our people? People are our infrastructure too. And education is a big component of that. I'm the only candidate that led on repealing Tabor. Now, you've heard, let's try to fix it. Let's try to work around it. We need to repeal it. It's killing our infrastructure here in our state. I'm also proposing that we connect not just I-25, that's the Front Range. What about the Western Slope? What about I-75 or the I-70 corridor? Connecting I-70 across from east to west. We need a governor that's going to forward think on how we reduce our carbon footprint here, not only just our state, but our country. So I have a 4-step plan on getting rid of Tabor. Number 1, we have to get the votes in the state Senate. We're down about 2 votes in the state Senate. That's number 1. I would like to put Tabor on a statewide ballot initiative in the fall of 2019. So if I'm elected governor, I'm going to work with the state House to get it on a statewide ballot measure in the fall of 2019. It is so important that I think we need an off-year ballot initiative to get rid of it once and for all. And if I'm elected governor, I'm going to go to all 64 counties around this state, campaigning again to explain to each individual communities, each individual county on the benefits of getting rid of Tabor. See, Republicans try to say if we repeal Tabor that your taxes go up. Now, can someone explain to me how your taxes are going to go up when we've already collected the taxes in the first place? So that doesn't make any sense. But I have a clear plan and vision to rid our state of Tabor so we can grow and be prosperous once and for all. Thanks.
Let me share with you first an unfun fact related to our neighbor to the west, Utah. They have half the roads that we do, and they spend $600 million a year maintaining that infrastructure. We have double the amount of roads that they do, and we spend $160 million. There's a reason why our roads aren't working for us. There are reasons why in the wintertime sometimes people can't get from their home to their hospital because the roads are closed. An investment in infrastructure is unique. I've learned in manufacturing that if you don't maintain a machine and it breaks, it costs 10 times more than if you would have just provided preventive maintenance the whole way. Infrastructure is the same way as citizens of this state. If we make an investment in our roads, ultimately it pays a return to us. And yes, there's a $9 billion deficit in what we need to be spending, and yes, it will require our investment. But I think it's the right investment. As governor, I will work, as you've heard many on this panel talk about, taking on the issues of Tabor and frankly keeping the right of each of us to vote on new taxes, but stripping out the formulas within it that have sent back billions of dollars that could have gone to our schools, to our bridges, and to our infrastructure. It does take leadership, and it does take honest talk, and that's about investment. Now, you also mentioned broadband. There's no question that a good part of this state does not have access to broadband. And without that, you can't create the commerce or the jobs or the remote jobs that would provide opportunity for communities that don't have a lot of business nearby. So creating a statewide plan to roll out high-speed internet is critical, leveraging the technology that is coming at us, but also ensuring that within the next few years, the first few years of my administration, that all of Colorado gets the coverage it needs. And yes, when we look at transportation, jumping back to that for a minute, we need passenger rail. The economics would make sense north-south on the Front Range, but we also need solutions for all of Colorado, taking the best of technology and deploying it so that we can move around our state in a way that works for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I think when you ask a specific question about infrastructure, you deserve a specific answer. You're going to hear in this race a lot of big ideas, and aspiration is important, but results is more important. So I'm going to use a pun. This is where the rubber hits the road. Okay? You want to know about infrastructure. What's infrastructure? It's transportation, it's water, it's broadband. It can be other things, but I think you're asking a concrete question, and I'm the person that works on this every day and will continue to do that as your governor and produce results. So what are we doing on transportation? Last year I worked on the negotiation of a bill that actually let us get out from under the Tabor cap. I do not believe we're going to repeal Tabor. It's been here for 25 years. We'd all love to see it go. Let's figure out how to get things done with what we have, modify Tabor, but still not wait until we can get Tabor out of this state. So we reduced the Tabor cap last year. We allowed the revenue to float up beyond the Tabor cap last year. It allowed us to put $1.8 billion into our roads and our transportation system. We need to do much more. $9 billion over the next 10 years, $25 billion by 2040. And it's got to be a mixture, not just roads, not just extra lanes, but things like more public transit. On water, we're doing the work now with the water implementation plan, where we have taken all the work that was done in the river basins and we're working on more storage and more conservation. And on broadband, I can't tell you, having been in healthcare and a passionate education person for my whole life, we've got to have broadband in your communities. And one of the things I do as the Lieutenant Governor is drive that change with all of our departments, local affairs, regulatory agencies that do this work. We have moved broadband from 50% 2 years in rural Colorado to 72%. Our goal is to get it to 85%, and I'm right now working on the funding bill that will actually accomplish that with Senator Coram. Yes, a Republican, but a good guy, and a lot of other Democrats in our legislature. Thank you very much.
Healthcare is the next topic, and Carrie's up first. I think we all know how frightening it is to face the future with uncertainty regarding healthcare and the unique challenges we face on the Western Slope. So the question is very simple. What is your vision for healthcare in Colorado?
So as I said in my opening remarks, I believe in universal health care. We can be proud of our accomplishments as a state and as a country in covering more people. So today in Colorado, 94% of the people in our state have health insurance. That's a huge accomplishment. For kids, the number's even better. 97.5% of kids in our state today are covered with health insurance. We're not going back to the days when a quarter of the population couldn't get health insurance. I helped start the Child Health Plan here in Colorado, where we expanded health insurance to tens of thousands of people in our state. But those numbers are the success of the Affordable Care Act, the success of the Medicaid program, the success of the child health plan, and you will see me as governor work with other governors around this country to make sure we maintain that partnership with Washington so that we can continue to cover everyone here in our state. The challenge we face is cost. And while a lot of people have health insurance, an awful lot of people can't afford their premiums and their out-of-pocket costs and their pharmaceuticals. I hear too many times on this campaign from families that are spending $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month on their family's health insurance, and they're healthy. It is why I am proposing that we offer a public health insurance option to everyone in our state. I am the only candidate proposing it. It would give anyone in the state of Colorado the opportunity to purchase Medicaid as a health insurance plan or purchase either of the plans that we offer our state employees. And we can offer these plans for less than what you're currently getting in the private market because we got a big pool enrolled so we can negotiate lower and fairer rates. There is no profit margin in the Medicaid program. And we've got lower overhead, lower admin costs. We should pass those savings on to everyone in our state. That is my proposal.
I believe in universal health care. If I had it my way, we would have Medicare for all. I like that. In the meantime, we have to do what we can to get there. Number one, I think we should expand Medicaid. There's about 100,000 people that can be eligible to get Medicaid. So we need to reach out and create more of an access for them. The other thing is about health care. Let's go to mental health for a second. Our county jails are not mental health facilities. So we need to stop jailing people with mental health issues in our county jails and our jails. We need facilities, healthcare facilities, mental health facilities around this state, and especially in rural communities such as this. So we need to work with our federal partners, and we need to spend our own money on creating these healthcare facilities for the mentally ill, because that's a big problem. And we also need, we're in a high school. We also need to make sure we have mental health counselors in our schools. Well, we don't currently have the funding for that, but we need to get there because you see what's going on all across the country and even here in our state. So healthcare is a very broad issue, but we need to look at the specific issues in our communities and address those issues, and part of it is the funding. Where is the funding going to come from? So I propose that we work with Western states, such as California, New Mexico, Utah, and create a pool where we can have some kind of a free healthcare exchange for people to buy into or to support people that can't pay for it. So those are my plans and ideas about healthcare.
When my wife and I sponsored those Dreamer kids at South Lincoln, it was before CHIP, before the work that had been done. And when they got sick, they got really sick, and then they went to the emergency room. And it cost all of us 10 times more because obviously they couldn't pay. So what's the point of what is currently happening in Washington? The work that has been done to dismantle the ACA will result in millions of people in this country, excuse me, losing their health care. So we do have to address this at the state level because clearly, federally, it's not. And today, if healthcare is 18% of our GDP, and we need to ensure that 100% of our population, not 97% of our young kids or 94% of all of us, that 100% have healthcare through a universal healthcare system, how do we do that? So one of the proposals that I have, and I have reached out to, within the last several weeks, to one of the gubernatorial candidates in California, to ask him who, he had reached out to me to take what I'm doing around CareerWise Colorado, a statewide youth apprenticeship system, and he added that to his platform. And I said, could we work together to create an interstate compact and with other Western states to create our own universal healthcare system? Would it be easy? No. Will it be challenging? Yes. But if we don't take this on as governors, it's not going to happen in Washington. We have to do this. And it will make a difference for all of our people, but ultimately, if we don't bend the cost curve, it can't go from 18% of our GDP to 20 or 21%. It'll bankrupt this country and this state. So how do you do that? Right now, there are walls, I would call, of non-competition between us and our healthcare providers, the pharmaceutical companies, the hospital companies, and because they don't have to compete with each other, they can charge anything. Why does an MRA cost $800 at one hospital and $1,800 somewhere else? We have to force competition by ensuring that each of us understand what healthcare costs, and in so doing, begin to make healthcare more affordable because of competition. Thank you.
Thank you. So health care is a lot more than just health care. It's about health, right? We all want to be healthy, and so being thoughtful about how we prevent illness and the spread of illness and the advance of illness is important. There's no question, I think as Democrats, we're all in support of universal health care. Every single person must have access to health care, whether they work or don't work, whether they live in one place or another place, or whatever other differences we might have. It's a fundamental right that we all ought to have. The question is, how do we get there? Thank you. Thanks. Sometimes you want to get all the words out, but don't stop for the applause, right? So Representative Mitch Bush and I, as well as Representative Millie Hamner, Senator Quorum, and Senator Donovan spent a lot of time in 2016 trying to tackle the problems of health care, particularly in our high-cost counties. We came up with 7 different solutions that involved more transparency, that involved the purchasing pool concept, that involved buying into the state health plan. We approached it with gusto, and guess what happened? We got stopped by the Republicans. I will not let that happen as governor. There are ways that right now I am working to do all of those things. We can do it through the administrative structure of the state of Colorado. I cannot disclose everything that's going to happen, but we will fight back against the people who don't want to make healthcare more accessible and more affordable. You should read, just yesterday, the governor released at the National Governors Association a blueprint for healthcare change that involves more transparency around data and costs, that involves value-based purchasing, that involves reforming our insurance markets. We worked on that together to get that out with a bipartisan group of governors. We actually do have one independent governor in Alaska. We have some Republicans like Governor Kasich. It is the blueprint for health care, and I will lead that work as your governor as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Echo my colleagues here in saying that universal access to affordable health care has to be a fundamental right. And we have to make sure that right is available in all 64 counties. And so I think there are 3 big parts of this. One is, yes, what do we do to drive down costs? The second is, what do we do to take on directly the mental health and behavioral health crisis in this state right now? And the third is, what are the investments we make in prevention that actually make us all healthier and bring down the cost of the system overall? So the first one is on cost. Yes, as you know, the Western Slope and the Eastern Plains both are 2 of the most expensive healthcare regions in the United States of America right now. And one of the reasons why that is because there is no competition in those markets. And so there are a couple things we're proposing doing. One is to ensure that any Coloradan, anywhere in the state, can get access to health insurance that is never more than 10% of what they make. And if you are living anywhere in a region where you're paying more than 10% of what you make, we would open up immediately the chance for you to buy into Medicaid, which is going to open up a public option in those markets that don't have competition. And that we will incentivize more and more providers to come out to the parts of the state where we need more providers and more competition. And the folks that don't want to come out to those regions will help support the reinsurance pool that will back up those providers that do come. We also want to make sure there's cost transparency, so you know when you go into the hospital what the charges are going to be, not just for you out of pocket, but for your insurance, and you can make some decisions in advance about how you get access to that. The two other parts are, yes, we have to go at mental health. We have to expand access to mental health providers. We're incentivizing more and more providers to come out to rural areas by providing incentives for both primary care as well as mental health to come out to these regions. And I'm running out of time, so I'm going to say quickly, the challenge also on prevention, or we have to make key investments in preventing tobacco use at a young age, and in obesity. We know access to healthy foods and recreation are some of the biggest cost drivers in the state. We have to invest not just in health insurance, but in actually the lifestyles and the access to food and recreation that keep us healthy in the first place and help save us a lot of costs and a lot of heartache. Thank you so much.
Well, we're tackling some big issues here today. Hopefully,
120 seconds or less.
yeah, in 120 seconds or less. Exactly. It's really a challenge. Let's do another one. You ready? Take a breath.
We're ready. Let's keep it coming.
Eric, you're up next on this one. Gun violence. You know, we all see it every day, or it feels like we're seeing it every day. We had a lot of questions from the audience about gun violence as well as safety in our schools around that. And one participant just asked the question perfectly. Gun violence, what to do?
I grew up with it. I grew up with it, literally. With the tragedy that happened in Florida, we need to do something different and something new. I was inspired by those students at those rallies. They sound so awe-inspiring. They were articulate, and they made more sense than our politicians. They did. Yeah. So with that said, I want to take on the NRA. I have a plan for it. I actually unveiled it last night with the Durango Dems, but I feel even more special unveiling it here in the high school. I call it the Colorado Youth Voting Act. See, we need more allies to take on the NRA. I was inspired by those young students in Florida. So I want to lower the voting age from 18 in this state to 16. If you're old enough to drive, you're old enough to vote. I'm serious. We need to make it a high school requirement, and they can't graduate until they A, registered, and B, participate in one election. Also, I wanted to lower the age requirement for state representative to 18 years old. We need more people that will stand up to special interests and lobbyists so we can take our country back. I want to lower the state senate age to 21, and we'll keep governor at 35. We need life experience where you take on a statewide job. But we need to empower our youth. Civics is lost. We need to get them back engaged in the process. So my Colorado Youth Voting Act, and don't steal it, Mike, will help take on the NRA and instill the saneness in our democracy. Thank you.
Columbine, the Aurora shooters, Sandy Hook, Las Vegas, Florida, and very little has changed. Fortunately, in Colorado, we had leadership. Mike, I think you were one of them that helped to pass the high-capacity magazine ban. And we had legislators that lost their jobs because they stood up for it, because they went through recall. And they did exactly the right thing. But in this country, if we don't listen to our children, and I think we were all moved by these kids in Florida because they spoke the truth, and we all knew it. And when our legislators come back and give half promises or solutions like, let's bring more guns into the classroom and have our teachers that we ask way too much for, let's give them guns so they can protect our students. Is this a war zone? that we're standing in right now or not? So how do you deal with it? There isn't one simple solution. We know that. But certainly ensuring that everyone has to go through gun safety training so that they understand the power that they wield within their hand if they have a gun or a rifle. That should be universal. Second, do we really need weapons of war as part? Is that what the framers of our Constitution meant with the Second Amendment? I don't think so. They had muskets back then. So banning the AK-47 and the AR-15 needs to be something that we do. But more than that, if you don't think that the $3.2 million that Cory Gardner receives from the NRA influences his decision and many other leaders like him in Congress, we're kidding ourselves. We have to stand up, and maybe it is ultimately through our Constitution, but if we're going to stand up for the lives that are lost every day, of which it's about 76 by gun violence in this country, then we have to stop the money that flows to our political leaders that incense them to either make bad decisions or elect people that just think differently than the majority of Americans who want real gun safety. So with you, either as a citizen or your next governor, we have to fight this because it's a national scourge. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a solemn issue. I don't want to make fun about anything on this issue because it just gets personal. Many of us know people who have died in incidents, and not just school shooting incidents. And I want to, those are tragic. We don't want our children going to school and being unsafe, and I agree. We do not want armed teachers. I'm sorry. My sister's a teacher. My son's a teacher. I don't really want them carrying guns and defending other people in the schools. Those guns will get stolen. Those guns will get lost. Those guns will misfire. I think it is totally inappropriate to have teachers having guns in schools. But we do have to do something, right? And it can't just be locking every door in the school and having some kind of weapon detection program. But we have to recognize that most of the gun violence that happens in this country is not school shootings, as tragic as they are. They're one-on-one gun incidents. And if you have read the paper over the last several months, or just know, the proliferation of guns in the United States is directly related to gun violence and gun deaths. We have to address that. The easy thing is bump stocks, right? So within 2 weeks of the Las Vegas shooting, Senator Mike Merrifield here in Colorado and I had a press conference to talk about outline bump stocks. He has a bill. It will get voted down by the Republicans in the legislature, but nevertheless it calls a question. Secondly, we need to outlaw those kinds of semi-automatic weapons that we do not need. I was sitting next to a gentleman last night in Crested Butte, and we were talking about guns, and I was articulating a point of view, and he said, well, I have 9 of them. And I said, I'm sorry, can you explain why you have 9? I get a handgun, I get a hunting rifle. I'm not sure what that is all about. We then turned to the other people at the other table and said, I think we don't like each other. So I will take a strong position on gun control. I will not accept money from the NRA, gun manufacturers, anybody connected in any of those spaces, and we'll fight for good things for them.
Here is a sobering reality. In a little more than a month, we will remember the 19th anniversary of Columbine. And if you go back to Columbine right now, there is a memorial outside of that school, and written in granite it says, "This day brought the world to its knees. But when we got up, what had changed?" I think this last week the answer was, nothing has changed. And so I believe that is not an adequate answer for the state of Colorado. And I believe this requires a clear set of actions and the courage to take those actions. So we unveiled a plan we called 4 No More, which is what are the 4 things we can do to make sure there are no more of these type of school shootings and of these senseless deaths. The first is you have to get military-style weapons off the streets of Colorado. That is not complicated. And I fought successfully in the state Senate against the NRA to do that by banning more than 15-round magazines. The second is you have to have a universal background check for when you buy a gun, anywhere, anytime, from anyone, period, full stop. The third is, yes, we have to ban bump stocks, which we ought to do. And the fourth is you ought to make sure that you keep guns out of the hands of those who have shown that they are a danger to themselves or to others. And that is true because you're right, this is not just about mass shootings, this is about the overwhelming number of suicides every year in this state from gun violence. It is about the single largest killer of women in this country right now are their own domestic partners. It is about getting the hands out of folks who have convicted histories of domestic violence. Now, I am different from some folks in that I grew up on the Western Slope. I am a gun owner. I've been a gun owner my entire life, and I am now. I also have never known someone in my family who needed a 100-round magazine to shoot an elk, or who needed a bump stock to defend their own home. It is very possible for us to protect Colorado's core Western values about gun ownership and still say we are not going to preside over any more funerals for 14-year-olds. Thank you.
One day last spring, I got a text, an emergency text on my phone saying that my daughter's high school had gone on lockdown because there was a shooting. All the kids were fine. It was on the street that ran outside along the school. But when I got that headline text last week that said school shooting, I think I had the same reaction that every parent and that every grandparent in this country had, which is, oh God, what school? Right? And as soon as you know it's not your kid's school, you breathe a sigh of relief. But the horror that the parents have lived through, and the horror that the parents lived through at Columbine and lived through at Aurora, we should not have to live in fear when our children go off to school. We should not have to live in fear when our kids say they're going to see a late-night movie. We need to ban military-style weapons in this country. We need Congress to ban military-style weapons, and we need the state of Colorado to ban military-style weapons. And I am proud of the steps that Senator Johnston and our Democratic leaders took following the Aurora Theater shooting. The ban on magazines above 15 rounds is keeping those high-capacity firearms off our streets. And we do have background checks on every single gun sale in this state. We have closed those loopholes. And today, over 1,200 people have been denied the ability to purchase a firearm because they have a criminal record, because they have a restraining order against them, because they have a history of domestic violence. And I think responsible gun owners don't believe that individuals like that should be able to purchase firearms. Those laws are keeping all of us safer. You'll see me as governor defend them.
Education, topic that's come up already today. One of the questioners actually expressed the feeling that teachers on the Western Slope are under siege with low salaries and inadequate funding. So what's your plan for education and how to help teachers?
Well, teachers certainly are under siege. When you think that Colorado is 42nd out of 50 states in funding education, when you know that in many parts of rural Colorado, the most a teacher is making is around $29,000, it should be no surprise that we have a teacher shortage. I can't tell you how many places I've gone in our state where people said, we need to build affordable housing for our teachers. And I began to believe maybe we should just pay them as professionals. Now, to do that, What does that take? It takes an investment from all of us. Now in the state, you've heard a lot about Tabor. Tabor's not the only problem. Gallagher is too. And in many cases for education, probably a bigger challenge. Because where a lot of money comes from, is through our property taxes. And when the Gallagher Amendment was first put in place, and I talked to Dennis Gallagher, who it was named after, I said, Dennis, it's not serving what you originally intended, which was to protect people from limited and fixed incomes from being able to be priced out of their homes. And I said, would you be willing to modernize Gallagher, to think about rethinking it so that it can better serve our state? And he said, well, no one's ever asked, and yes. So the first thing we have to do is make an investment in education, and as your governor, I will travel the state to build the coalition to do that. But I've also spent decades working around education in our state, and I did found CareerWise Colorado, a statewide youth apprenticeship system that begins in middle school through career exploration, and then in the 11th grade, kids can begin an apprenticeship in banking and finance, healthcare, IT, advanced manufacturing, spending 3 days a week in the classroom and 2 days a week in a business learning real skills, earning up to 30 credit hours of college credit, earning an industry credential, earning $10,000 a year in apprenticeship wage, and most importantly, along with their high school diploma, a path to a middle-class job. Business has a role in being part of the education system. Everything can't be done in the classroom, but we have to pay our teachers as professionals. We have to make that investment. And then business and industry can help lead the way as partners in the education model to ensure that we do address income inequality, and we do that through skills. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm also regretfully going to leave after this question so I can get back to Denver by 4, and that means I will be slightly over the speed limit, not too much. Anyway, education is so fundamental, and again, I think that there is going to be little disagreement you're going to hear from us about that issue. We're a fairly wealthy state. No one wants to pay more taxes, but we have to call the question on education funding, I believe, and that will be done in some ballot initiatives this year. But in the short term, we are doing some things to address the teacher shortage, which we know we have a teacher shortage of 3,000 in this state. And we have more and more people retiring as we go forward. We have to pay teachers an adequate salary. It is unconscionable to be at $27,000 a year and expect housing and health care to come along with that. That's number one. Number two, we did just put in this current budget that we are working on right now, $30 million into the budget explicitly for rural teacher salaries. It is going to go to rural schools, not to everybody. We have income and other kinds of inequalities in this state, from districts that can add bond and mill levies to those that cannot do that. And economic development in parts of Colorado outside of the Front Range is as important to supporting education and property values and jobs as just calling a question on a tax increase. So those are the things that I think are really, really important to work on when we talk about education. We also have to do, I think, a public service type program. When I was in healthcare, in order to get doctors or healthcare professionals to go into certain communities, we would agree to either pay off some of their student loans or to give them some support on housing. I think education is at that critical stage now in certain parts of Colorado, and as governor, I will work on a plan to do just that. If we can't get something passed at the ballot on taxes to fund education better, which I hope we can, then we will have very targeted programs at key areas in Colorado that will include the Western Slope. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I regret having to leave.
Let's just give another round of applause for making it here to come together.
Thank you. I spent most of my career as a public school teacher and as a public school principal. I'm very proud that I am a fourth generation public school teacher, and so I would be the first public school teacher to be elected as governor. I think we could use a teacher in the governor's office I think there are a couple really important issues to take on here, which is Yes, at the heart of it is funding, but I think there are three things to talk about. One is we have to make sure that statewide we actually provide full-day kindergarten to all kids in the state, and that we provide preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds who need it the most. And that is not, thank you, that's important. That is not just a good moral idea, that is actually a good financial idea. Right now, we know is we spend more trying to remediate and catch up first graders and second graders who come in unprepared than we would spend investing in sending them to preschool or full-day kindergarten in the first place. The second is, yes, we have to invest more in school funding, but not all school funding is created equal. Right? So I have worked in education at every single level. I've been a classroom teacher, I've been a school principal, I've been a state senator, I've advised the US President on education. And what I can tell you is it matters not just what kind of money you spend, it matters where you spend that money. Because I don't need to tell the folks in this room right now, the current school funding formula in Colorado disproportionately disserves rural communities and low-income communities across the state. So you can't just put more money into the old system. You actually have to change that system to make sure dollars go to where it's needed the most. And I think that's about rural districts and low-income districts. And then finally, we have to make sure that college and career training is affordable for all of our kids. What we know is the majority of jobs created over the next decade are going to require some sort of post-secondary skills. And only a little more than half of the folks in Colorado have those skills. So we proposed a plan called the Colorado Promise, which would allow folks at any stage in their career, if they're 18 looking for a first job or 58 looking for a 10th job, get up to 2 years of career training, skills training, or community college, where the tuition would be covered debt-free in exchange for you providing meaningful service to the state. Nothing's free in Colorado, you gotta work for it. But the idea is if you work for it, there ought to be opportunity at the end of it. So our idea is like a civilian version of the National Guard. Keep your day jobs 5 days a week, 10, 12 weekends a year, serve the state, and that service helps you get the skills you need for the jobs that are coming. Thank you so much.
It's shameful what Tabor has done to our public education system here in Colorado, and it's one of the reasons why I'm running for this office. Our teachers here in Colorado are paid among the lowest salaries in the country. Teachers can't afford to work here, they can't afford to live here. It's no surprise when you wake up and you read that headline that we have a teacher shortage crisis. They're leaving the state and they're leaving the profession. We are losing that pipeline of talent. This is the first generation growing up today, my kids' generation, where their teachers are telling them not to go into teaching. That is a real challenge for our state, because we want to make sure that our kids are prepared for the knowledge-based economy that we're building here. We don't want the companies that are moving into Colorado, when they go to fill their high-paying jobs, to recruit from outside of state. We want them to hire our kids. So I've worked on education my entire career. I was the author of Amendment 23. It is the only measure that has passed statewide in Colorado in 30 years that increased funding for public education. I also, as your state treasurer, created the Building Excellent Schools Today program, the program that has put $1 billion into rebuilding old schools in communities across this state. 380 schools to date have been rebuilt, including your Columbine Middle School right up the street here. I'm proud to have been endorsed by both the Colorado Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers Colorado, because I will lead to build what Colorado should have, which is one of the best public education systems in the country. One that matches our state's great progress and gives kids those opportunities regardless of where they are growing up and how much their parents make. We need to make sure we have equity in this system, and it'll be my top priority as governor.
I'm a proud public school graduate. I don't believe in charter schools. I don't believe in taking public funds of your hard-earned money funding our charter schools. So let's get that out of the way right now. You know, I believe the question is about teachers and how can we help them and what we can do to improve their hectic schedules and educating our children. You know how you go into a store and you might spill something in the aisle, and sometimes We all been there. You act like you didn't do it. Kind of like Stevie Wonder, like, you know. Well, we got some candidates that are playing dodgeball. Amendment 23 was supposed to be a workaround for Tabor. It was supposed to keep up with the inflation to fund public school education across the state equally. How's that working out for you when you're on a 4-day school schedule? When we went through the economic crisis in 2008, Amendment 23 went lopsided. So the most funded school districts are Boulder, Cherry Creek, and some of the Front Range schools, not out here. So we need to get rid of Amendment 23 because it's killing your school. That's the reason why you're on a 4-day school schedule, because the funding isn't there. The other thing is Senate Bill 191, which punished teachers instead of what it was originally intended to do, was to test the students to get them the resources. Senate Bill 191 was Mike Johnson. So we need to get rid of that and fix it so we can create the opportunities for our students, not giving our teachers a hard time with giving them rigorous testing and evaluations. That's the reason why we have a 3,000 teacher shortage here in our state. So we need to do things differently, and we need new leadership that's going to recognize these deficiencies and correct them.
We have time for only one more question, and then we'll have some closing remarks. So that there are certainly some other questions, and I just wanted to let you know what's been on the mind of folks. They've asked questions about PARA, our Public Employee Retirement Association, and the challenges it's faced. Questions about immigration. Questions about protecting our water supply. Questions about our small farmers, which are becoming an important part of our economy. Questions about politics and money and gridlock issues, I think, and low-income issues and the challenges faced there. But I'm going to pull rank because I'm the moderator. So the last question is going to be about criminal justice. Some of you may not know, the governor plays a very important role in criminal justice issues in the state of Colorado. The governor appoints all of our judges. The governor is very involved in setting the agenda for what issues are going to be addressed and how those issues are going to be addressed. One of the participants asked a question, and it's actually really insightful, and you can address your criminal justice issues, I think, in response to this question. Should the opiate problem be handled by law enforcement?
Is that the question?
That's the question.
Great. Wow.
Topic is criminal justice. You are up because Diane had to depart.
Great.
Mike?
Thank you so much. Among the parts of my life, I ran a school in a juvenile prison for a while, and so my wife is a district attorney in Denver, and so this is a part of our life every day. I want to say a couple things about other parts of criminal justice that we've come out with. There are some things I think the state has to do differently. One is, yes, we have to stop criminalizing drug addiction. We have to stop criminalizing mental health, and we have to stop criminalizing poverty. And that means, how do you actually provide services to those folks who need services in places that are better than a state prison? Because it turns out the mental health care is not that good there, nor is the drug addiction treatment. And so we have proposed expanding drug courts and mental health courts that allow people to identify what their needs are around addiction or around mental health support, and then get them to providers who can actually give them the support and the resources they need. In addition, we've called for weaning the state of Colorado off of private prisons. I don't believe the state should have a profit motive to keep people incarcerated. What you want to do is to have an incentive to get them out and get them back to being citizens. And then I think I have also come out and said I believe that, and I would sign a bill as Colorado governor to repeal the death penalty. I do not believe that that is a humane course of punishment, nor does it work or deter crime. And so I think it's time has come for us to end that. I will say this last one, which is opioids. Yes, take it on directly. I do think that the state has a critical role here in the intervention around drug addiction and around the opioid crisis. And I think that is about increasing the access to mental health providers and to drug addiction treatment centers in the rural parts of the state where we have the greatest need and the fewest amount of services. I think that is also about making sure that we expand access to MAT, which is medication-assisted treatment, which is the most clinically proven way to be able to help people cure that addiction. Right now, if you take folks off cold turkey, they turn to heroin, which is far more dangerous. And if you continue to extend the access for it, people stay addicted. So we have to have both a humane and an effective way to help take on that crisis. I think the governor has to lead to do it. Thank you so much.
As the services that we provide for people who face mental illness, for people who suffer from addiction, have diminished and become less available in communities throughout our state, those folks have ended up in the criminal justice system. Their default housing has become the jail. And I think Dan would tell you that the folks at the jail, they're not equipped to be able to handle or treat people who are there with mental illness, with addiction. 40% of the people behind bars in Colorado today have mental illness. They need services. And our lack of services in our communities is fostering this cycle of mass incarceration because people are being drawn into the criminal justice system because they aren't able to get preventative care. When I was the CFO for the city of Denver, I helped create the first program of its kind in the country where we're moving 250 individuals out of the Denver jail. They're chronically homeless and they're addicts. And taxpayers are spending a lot of money paying for their cycle of arrests and detox and emergency room treatment and jail bed days, when really what they need is supportive housing with addiction treatment services. It's actually less expensive to keep folks, chronic addicts, in supportive housing with treatment than it is to have them cycling in and out of the criminal justice system. So you will see me expand upon that model as governor. We should have those services available in every community, and I know we got too many communities in this state where there isn't even one treatment provider. That's got to change.
Criminal justice reform, huh? Well, we legalized cannabis, right, in this state. And the boneheaded thing that we never did was expunge those records for people with marijuana possession. As governor, I'm going to work with the state legislator to, it was up for a vote last session and it didn't pass. So we need to expunge people who've been convicted of marijuana possession. Because some of those are felonies and some of those people can't move on with their lives. They still have that stigma attached, and they're in a state that has since legalized it. So we have to do the right thing on expunging those records. And if the state legislator still doesn't want to do that, then I'm going to be one pardoning fool as governor on getting these people back to their lives, because that's an important issue. The opioid addiction is huge. Last year, opioid deaths surpassed actual murders here in the state. So we do definitely have to create the resources in rural communities to make sure that they have access to getting off their addiction. It's a disease, not a crime. And so we have to treat it as such. So we have to open up these resources, but again, we have to focus on opening up treatment facilities, mental health and addiction facilities, and make sure that there's access to them. I'm not for private prisons, so as governor, I would never open up a private prison here in this state, because I'm not in the business of locking up people and making money off of them. because you need to fund those private prisons by locking people up. We have enough issues in the state as it is by making a business out of it. So those are some of my thoughts on criminal justice reform.
First, I have to say that criminal justice reform starts with making sure that kids don't end up in the system in the first place. And the best way to do that is to make an investment in education. And none of us should forget that. The vast majority of people in prison are high school dropouts, so that needs to change. Now, I shared with you about the young kids that I mentored. We didn't have a 100% success rate, and one of those kids has been in the penal system 3 separate times. And each time, Anthony gets worse, not better, because he leaves there each time without the skills that he needs to cope within a free society. He's developed mental health issues after this last time. And what have we developed? A bill to take care of him probably for the rest of his life. So if we don't reform our criminal justice system, recognizing that it is about punishment, but it is also about rehabilitation. And if we make that investment correctly, we ultimately will spend much, much less in keeping them in prison rather than letting them go back into society and get a good job with the skills they need to compete. So making that investment in the long run is best for all of us. Now, beyond that, we also have to realize that with the opioid issue within this state, that it is a mental health issue. It is an addiction. And if we simply look to incarcerate, we're doing the wrong thing. I sat down with the Fraternal Order of Police and they said, we arrest people every day that we know we shouldn't be taking to jail. We should be taking them to treatment because they will not get the services that they need. So our criminal justice system has to change. We have to provide the training, the support, and for those people that are addicted or have mental health issues, the place that they should be is not our jails. In the long term, that will be better for all of us. We have to have a heart in the decisions that we make. It's not just about punishment. It's about rehabilitation just as well. Thank you.
Well, wow. I'm always so impressed when I hear all of you. You know, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that running for public office is difficult. It's not easy. And I am always impressed when people who care and people who are thoughtful and hardworking are willing to do it. We are all best served when great candidates step forward and are willing to run and come to Montrose. So let's give them that. That's outstanding. People don't think we don't appreciate you over here. We appreciate you over here. Darn right we do. Okay, they're going to do 3-minute closings, and we are on time, Connie.
Yes, we are.
All right.
2 or 3
No.
minutes?
I think we have
3.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
3 minutes for closing.
Right. No.
When I first entered this race, a friend of mine said to me, Noel, you are so engaged in the community. You're working on an initiative that is looked at nationally as a real transformational solution to education in our country. Why not just do that? And we talked it out, and she finally said, you know, Noel, I think I've figured this out. It's not that you want to be governor, it's that you want to make a difference. And by being governor, you can do that in the best way. And she was right. Whether it was working with the young kids through the I Have a Dream Foundation, working with Governor Romer to modernize our state standards in education, or founding CareerWise Colorado, a youth apprenticeship system giving more opportunities, addressing income inequality in this state, it's about making a difference in people's lives. We know that we have a healthcare challenge in this state and in this country. Even though we have it, many of us can't afford it. If your governor doesn't feel as well as understand the issues that you are dealing with, then he or she won't be able to do the job that you are asking us to do, because this is an important role. We serve you. Our morals, our ethics are what you're investing in when you vote for your next governor. And I have led my life caring about the people in my community and in this state. Led my business caring about my employees because I knew that how I treated them would be reflected in how they're able to raise their family. I understand business, I understand community. I have started some of the most innovative initiatives in our state, not because I wanted to raise a flag and someday be governor of this great state, but I did it because I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And we have real challenges moving forward. As good as our economy is in Colorado, with a 3.2% unemployment rate, or 2.3% unemployment rate, the fact is, people don't have good jobs. It's not just about having a job, it's about having a good job. I'm building an education system through CareerWise to help make that a reality. We have healthcare challenges in our state that we're not addressing. We have teacher shortages, teacher funding shortages. We have schools that have pent-up demand of over $650 million in new construction and maintenance construction that's necessary. We can continue to stick our head in the sand, or we can elect principled leaders that will fight every day for the things that will make life better for us in Colorado, but most importantly, maybe, is set an example for this country, how we deal with healthcare, how we deal with education. This isn't just a Colorado problem, it's a country problem. As your next governor, I will fight every day for the things that will make our lives better, because I care deeply about this state, about each of you and your children, and the next 50 years of our state, and I believe that starts with great leadership. I'm Noel Ginsberg. Please go to my website, noelforcolorado.com, to learn more about my history, because it matters. Thank you.
I was thinking before I came here this morning on my trip. I was in Durango yesterday to Cortez. We had to stop there with the Democrats there last night. And what I was struck was what I've been struck with all over the state, on the Eastern Plains and here. There's some really good, salt of the earth people here. But you guys have been left out of the conversation when it comes to rural issues. My campaign theme, again, is outward inward, from rural Colorado to urban Colorado and everyone in between. We can't afford to leave anyone behind in this state. I'm just a kid who came out of 3 housing projects, went to Washington, D.C. to work for a great 2-term governor who mentored me, who was a 2-term United States Senator as well, who went on to start a multi-million-dollar business. Through hard work, determination, I had people all my life tell me that I can't do this or I can't do that. I don't believe in the word can't, because if I believed in the word can't, I wouldn't be sitting here with these fine folks right here, running for governor. We need a governor that has a clear plan and vision. No sound bites. Sound bites is what got us Trump. That's what got us into the mess in the first place. Folks, we do have a great economy in this state, but it's not working for everybody. I know what it's like to be left out of the conversation, to have to fight for opportunities for access to those opportunities. I'm not going to forget about you if I'm elected the next governor. I'm going to continue to visit. There was people in Cortez last night, they said, Eric, you better come back here if you get nominated for governor. And I said, I will be back many times over because I believe in this state, I believe in this people. That's the reason why I'm running. I have clear visions and goals for this state, and I can't do it alone. Do you know what the definition of insanity is? You know what it is? It means you keep doing the same thing expecting a different result. Can we afford to keep doing the same thing? Or are you ready for something new, something different? The power is in your hands. I'm going through the caucus process. So the power, whether I move on or not, is squarely in your hands. So remember Eric Underwood, go to eritunderwood.com, and I'll see you along on the campaign trail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Montrose, for hosting us. This has been a terrific event. Special thanks to Dan and to Connie for all your hard work. I had an opportunity to meet with many of you last night when I had a meet and greet here in town. And I shared the story about one of my sisters. I mentioned I have 3 brothers and sisters who joined my family through the foster care program. And I told the story about my sister Karen. She joined our family when she was 14 years old. I was about 5 at the time. And Karen started attending our neighborhood public school. And it wasn't very long, and my mom got a phone call from Karen's music teacher. And she said, Karen has a gift. She has this beautiful voice. And Karen was able to take instrument lessons and vocal lessons at our neighborhood public school. And she found her passion in life. She would practice the piano for so many long hours that her fingers would swell, her knuckles would swell, and my mom would soak her hands in ice water to get the swelling down. Karen earned a full music scholarship to college and had a career as a performer and performed all across the United States. And I share Karen's story a lot on this campaign because when she moved in with our family, when she was 14 years old, she'd never played an instrument. She'd never had a music lesson because her old school in her old neighborhood couldn't afford to have a music program. It is why I care so deeply that we give every child growing up in the state of Colorado a world-class education, that we give them the opportunities to reach their fullest potential. And I have seen what Tabor has done in this state and the inequities, and there are too many kids in this state that aren't getting those opportunities. It is my #1 priority as governor. And you all know that what we're seeing coming out of Washington, it is going to take strong Democratic governors to lead this country in the years ahead. We got a president who would take us back 50 years on health care, on human rights, on environmental protections, on public lands. I will not let President Trump and the Republicans in Congress take our state backwards. You will see me as governor fight him in the State House, in the courthouse. I told the group last night, we got a line on this campaign, we're gonna make a bumper sticker. What happens in Washington stays in Washington. We're gonna lead here from the West. And I want to thank you all for your advocacy and your work on behalf of the Democratic Party. I am also putting my name on the primary ballot through the caucus process and would really appreciate it if you would like to caucus for me on March 6th. Go on as a delegate to the County Assembly and the State Assembly, and don't forget to pick up a contribution envelope on your way out as I'm raising funds to finance the campaign. Thank you so much for being here. We're gonna win this and elect the first woman governor of the state of Colorado.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to state the obvious truth, which is these are all good candidates. And I will tell you they were also all great people. We get to travel the state a lot together. We're all friends. The state is very lucky, I think, to have a slate of really great people that care about this race. I will say one thing we cannot afford to do is have a 2019 that gives you a President Trump, a Speaker Paul Ryan, a Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, and a Republican Governor of Colorado. The most important question here is who can win a general election to make sure you keep the Colorado governor's mansion in Democratic hands. So I want to say a word about that, because you've heard us all on policy. There are a number of things that matter to be able to win this race. One that matters is you got to be able to raise the money to compete. I'm very proud that our campaign has raised more money to this moment than any gubernatorial campaign in Colorado history, by Republicans or Democrats, candidates or incumbent governors. And we are the only campaign that has done it without taking a single dollar of PAC money, a single dollar of special interest money, or a single dollar of self-financing. That matters. We were also the first campaign to complete the process to get on the ballot this week by submitting petitions. We submitted 22,000 signed petitions, faster than any campaign in history has ever done it. And we did it only with our organizing team and with volunteers all across the state, who were knocking on doors like yours in parking lots and in grocery stores, which I think is a proof of the movement you are going to need to be able to succeed. And you're going to need the support from folks who've done this job. I'm also the only candidate who has the endorsement of a Colorado governor, a U.S. senator, big city mayor, folks who've run and won races like this and know what it takes. I think that also matters. And it matters to be someone who can be at home in all parts of the state. I have been coming to this town for 30 years, not just for the last 10 months of a campaign. Even though there were some hard losses, I still keep coming to this town. And so I think it matters that I grew up on the Western Slope and have families that are farmers and ranchers out here. I think it matters that I'm a fluent Spanish speaker and can listen and talk to folks in all parts of the state in their native language. I think it matters that I represented one of the poorest income districts in the state as state senator in Northeast Denver. I think those things make a difference when you got to figure out who is going to be able to build a coalition broad enough to win. And then I'll just close by saying I think it matters that you grew up in a place where you saw that the way that Colorado solves problems is by being able to bridge divides. My dad crossed this divide more than 55 years ago to live in Gunnison and in Crested Butte. And we've been living here ever since. But what you find in towns like this is it is still possible for good people to come together and solve big problems if you have folks who have the courage to do it. And if you have a way to see Colorado as us at our best, which is folks that share those common values and are willing to fight for them. That's the Colorado we'd like to build, and I would love your help in doing it. I will be at caucus on March 6th. Love to have you join us. Love to have you sign up to join our campaign. My name is Mike Johnston. Thank you for being here.
All right, wrap up by Connie, and then we're going to get you off those very hard bleacher benches.
Yes, I would like to thank all of you for coming over. I know you all made a trip over on the snowy roads, and we appreciate that you came. So my heartfelt thanks for you coming. You heard each one of them say that our caucus is very important, okay? If you didn't get your invitation to come to our caucus, you do have to be a registered Democrat to participate. But our caucus, March 6th, starts promptly at 7 o'clock. The doors open at 5:30 for registration. We will be in this building over in the cafeteria. So you know the location, just come back, walk a few more feet that direction. That's very important. I will let you know that all of these candidates, Noel Ginsburg, Eric Underwood, Kerry Kennedy, Mike Johnston, and also Jared Polis, who was not able to attend today, are on the caucus ballot. They will be on your caucus preference poll. Donna Lynn, our Lieutenant Governor, who did have to leave, she is only going the petition route. So she will not, so if you want to support her, hopefully you signed her petition so that she can get on the ballot as well. So anyway, so it's very important for you to come and be a part of the system, because this is our system. So anyway, thank you again for coming, and if you want to know more about our Montrose County Democratic Party, we have flyers. They will be at both doors, And so stop. I know the candidates have a little bit of time before they have to go to Grand. They are repeating this forum process in Grand Junction this afternoon. That starts at 3. I'm sure that Jerry L will appreciate you getting there a little bit before 3. So
If
they
you want
have.
to come again, we can give you a ride.
Yes. So they have a little bit of time if you want to talk to them before they need lunch, and then some time to get to Fruta, actually. So you have to have more than an hour to get to Fruta from here. But anyway, thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoyed this. Remember, if you did appreciate it, give us a monetary donation, please.